All right. So we were talking about um, going to sleep and getting good rest by practicing anapanasati. You're saying that you've been practicing that and you feel not tired.
Yeah. Well, I kind of feel like I have to uh, at this point. Mm.
Okay. Um, there are two qualities that people have that will give them poor sleep, or they will wake up tired or as if they didn't get enough. One is that if they spend the whole night in dreaming,
Mm.
because that's not really restful. Going down to the
Yeah.
really deep state of sleep is where we get best value out of it. And then REM sleep is kind of an intermediate place where the mind can be very active and also the body will be more active at that time. Um, an example of that is watching a dog when it's sleeping, because when it's dreaming, you can tell. They start
Mm.
moving their legs like they're running. They sometimes will woof and make sounds and other things like that. But children do too when they're sleeping or when they're
Mm.
dreaming in a really deep, how to say, um, the dream itself is really a strong kind of dream, which means the mind is really, really running. That's one of the ways that people do not get uh, good uh, rest, is because the mind is not resting.
Mm.
There is another way, and that way is that we are not getting enough air. We're not breathing well enough. All right.
Mm.
That when we're not getting enough air, we're not breathing enough. And in fact, this is what tends to happen to old people um, because they're just simply not dreaming. I mean, they're not getting enough air. So the sleep that they get is not really a restful, peaceful, restorative sleep. They're sleeping almost as if they go into a freeze state that has a basis of fear built in. And old people tend to have a lot of fear and a lot of emotions. You can see that, in fact, old men are typical for being grumpy, grumpy old men. Uh,
Yeah, I
Sending a
can see that.
message to it. So the breathing itself, and also the wandering mind in sleep. And look at that. Now we're looking at anapanasati, the two actual elements of anapanasati that get us out of a state of dukkha. If we're going to be starting practicing that as we're going to sleep at night, it's going to have great benefit, especially if, as we wake up occasionally, um, when the body is actually training to sleep in the lion's posture, it will move around at night.
Yeah.
And your job then will be to wake up enough, just enough wake up to come back into the lion's pose
Mm.
and further take a
Yeah.
deep breath and begin to enjoy the night. You see, um, I don't know where it got, but it seems to sound quite scientific that people need 8 hours of sleep. But if you look at the history of mankind, in fact, you look at the history of all mammals, and that there is a certain time in the night, every night, when animals are up. The dogs are sometimes sleeping, and they tend basically what happens is that when Tam goes to work at 6 in the morning, that's when the dogs come in
Yeah.
and try to get on the bed. But they normally are in and out during the night, that cats are also kind of nocturnal. But think about it from the perspective of that really in the old days, humans had to be protective even at night. As someone in the nest had to be kind of on guard. Whenever, let us say, 3 or more cowboys are out in the wilderness on horseback and they're spending the night, they want to have a guard. Someone has to change the guard during the night. So being on guard is a natural quality to wake up in the night and do something. For instance, if in some cases, if someone doesn't get up to tend the fire, everybody could be frozen to death the next morning. And so getting up in the night to tend the fire. So getting up and being awake during the night, having sleep interrupted, is a common ancestral tendency that humans have. And yet, we've been told by kind of modern science that, oh no, you've got to have this kind of sleep and you've got to have so much. So we've got another student coming in and he's going to have to go soon. Do you mind him if we bring him in or invite him on this conversation?
No problem.
Let's see if he comes in. So what we were talking about is that kind of the way that people would think is that the body goes to sleep, the mind goes to sleep, and then after it goes to sleep, it kind of drifts down through a dream state, stays there for a while, then goes into a deep state, and then comes back to a dream state, and then we wake up, and that's what happens throughout the night. But it may, in fact, happen more than once. And that it's actually better to not spend much time in the dream state. That if we're only going to get 4 to 6 hours of deep sleep anyway, then we might as well just get 4 to 6 hours of deep sleep. Now, here's something else that goes on, and as that is that to be able to wake up. Hang on. Hey, Chatman, are you on? Hello? I see his thing going on and off, but I don't know if he's here yet or not. Oh,
Hello.
here he goes. Okay. So we're talking about this is Marcus.
Nice to
Marcus
meet you.
lives in Chiang Mai in Thailand. And this is Chatton, and you live somewhere in the vicinity of London.
Is this Jack?
Okay, so I thought I'd go ahead and invite you in on the call because you said that you had only very limited time.
I don't think your mic is working.
Pardon?
I can't hear Jack.
Yeah. Cannot hear you. Your mic is not working, Chat.
Oh, sorry, chat. My mistake.
So, back to what we were talking about, and we'll let him get his mic straightened out.
Okay.
If we understand that part of our human nature is to live in danger and managing danger. That nighttime is normally a dangerous time. That's part of the reason why we want to have housing. We want to lock the doors. You want to be secure at night. And that's especially true if you're not in a fairly large group, like a household of a half a dozen or more people, where people will sleep at more or less odd hours. And so we want to feel safe and secure. And yet, our old habit and our old history is to be able to wake up during the night, possibly because it's dangerous. And so this is part of why Zen is trained the way that it is with the Zen stick.
Whacking them with the stick, yeah.
Whacking them in. Okay, so that part of the goal then is to go into the dormitory with these monks sleeping at night and whack whoever doesn't wake up when the Zen master is in there. Okay, so an example of that would be that if someone could come into your house and come into your room and start going through your belongings, it would be a good idea for you to wake up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so this is where we're coming from as a natural world to gain the fact that we have a usefulness in being able to wake up in the night and then go back to sleep when it's safe again. And to wake up in the night and then to go back asleep. This is something that humans have been doing all throughout history. And yet modern people think that because they've been listening to what the doctors have to say, that if they wake up in the middle of the night, especially if they're waking up because of dreams, now the mind will start to spin when the person is kind of awake, right? And now they can't get back to sleep, or that they'll worry about not being able to get back to sleep, thinking that their sleep has been disturbed and now he's going to get very little bad or little value out of it. And so you can see how people set themselves up to have a bad night when in fact what they were actually doing was something that's normal and natural. There's another possibility, and that is that someone can come into your room at night and they will make a noise such that you start to wake up, but you don't completely wake up. But in fact, what you do is you take what that event is and put it into your dream to try to make sense out of it in the dream that you're having. They used to have a lot of cartoons about that. That someone thought that this was happening, and then he woke up out of the dream to recognize that something else completely different was happening. The reality didn't match his dream state, but instead of waking up to the reality in the first place, he let that new information be incorporated into his dream. Well, if we're practicing mindfulness through the night, then that means that we should use any event or any opportunity that's going to wake us up is to wake up. Go ahead and wake up. Even if it's nothing more than you've recognized that you've run out of, that your posture has changed, and you wake up just enough to shift it back into the correct posture. And then you can begin to go back to sleep. But in this case, you would also make sure that you've got your ears open just to listen to what the night is like. Taking a few deep breaths and really enjoying the night and enjoying going back into sleep. And this may happen 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a night, and there's no problem with it. because these are normal ways of sleeping, and we wind up getting good rest because we're now capable of going directly down into that deep level of sleep and then come right back up to wakefulness without having to waste any time or a lot of effort in the dream state. And so we can come full consciousness, go directly into deep sleep, spend maybe an hour or 2 hours, and then wake up, change your posture, take a few deep breaths, and then you can go right back down into that deepest kind of sleep again without having to go into this intermediate botched up area that the Buddha calls it burning by day and smoldering by night, that the mind just smolders during the night. But if we can get it ready for sleep, in the sense of getting the mind clear and free and coming to a state of, wow, this is nice. I really like being in bed right now. This feels really good. We can make statements like, oh, there's no place to go and nothing to do, and I've got 8 hours to enjoy, and nobody needs anything from me. I'm completely free, and I can just lay here and enjoy myself. All right, with that kind of thought, then when we pass into sleep, we pass into a very, very restful kind of sleep, and we can go past that level of hindrances right into a deep level of sleep. As opposed to someone who is going to bed saying, oh, I've got to get to sleep. I've got so much work to do tomorrow. And while I'm laying here, I'm starting to think about that work. And I'll toss and I'll turn for a while, worrying I got to get to sleep and I got to get to sleep. And then finally I get to sleep. But guess what? The mind is still doing all of that race car business, continuing along in the dream state. Now it's gone from a state of active fire into just smoldering. And the guy's going to get up tired the next morning thinking that he did not get enough sleep, in the sense he wasn't sleeping long enough. They'll even have the idea that, I was tossing and turning for 30 minutes to an hour, and that means I lost that sleep. And that's why I feel bad in the morning, is because I lost that first hour. Well, not necessarily. It's that he also lost time during the night of getting good restful sleep because he was in a state of dream. Now, what that means is that if we begin to practice this more and more, we recognize or have dreams less and less. And when we do have dreams, they are fairly easy to be remembered, not as if they were important. Because the Buddha actually talks about that when people, in many, many different cultures, even from Joseph and the coat of many colors and dream interpretation of 7 fat cows and 7 lean cows and many, many others throughout all of our tradition, dream interpretation has been quite important. And in fact, Freud even wrote a book on dream interpretation. And in fact, that's one of his books that started giving him a bad rap in the 1970s, was because his dream interpretations were only, let us say, useful for the 1890s. But his interpretation then was based upon what people were dreaming about in the 1890s, not what was happening in the 1970s. And so they began to say, wait a minute. But way back when, in the time of the Buddha, the Buddha would say, don't worry about the dreams. Forget about them. They don't mean anything. That they're not predictive. Nor are they needed to be interpreted. They are, in fact, something like what happens with past life experiences. That when I was in India, in the ashrams there, The gurus and the swamis, they wanted to know about past life experiences. Anybody that had one, they were getting interviewed. What did you recognize? What did you see? What was blah, 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 blah. They were really, really into it. But in Thailand, if a student comes to a Buddhist meditation teacher and says, "Oh, I had this really incredible experience, past lives and all of that when I was in meditation," the teacher will basically say, "Never mind, start again. That was just an experience, and you obviously didn't interpret that experience very well because you're adding magical elements to it right here in front of me. So let's not go off into the magic land." And basically, that's what dreams are. It's a dream world, literally. You're, and then when people are definitely mistaken on something, they will actually be accused of dreaming. So now we can understand, oh, well, if we're dreaming, that means one, we're just simply spinning our wheels, not getting the rest we need, and that the dreams, other than that, have no value. There's no value at all in these dreams. Ah, but that's the same way with spending our whole day in junk thoughts. So we can begin to see that the night dreams that we have are nothing more than only barely semi or even less, maybe to the point of unconscious, repetitive thought patterns. And that when we're awake, our daydreams are nothing but repetitive thought habits that we're still not even paying close attention to. So it goes from unconscious to semi conscious. But the whole practice now about Apanasati is bringing this stuff up to full consciousness and recognizing and seeing what the mind is doing. And so that's another one would be that if you catch yourself dreaming, because sometimes you can, if you're on alert for it, going to bed, oh, I'm not, if I have any dreams, I'm going to know it kind of idea. And then when those dreams come, we can actually understand I'm in a dream. And we have various choices then. Once you know that you're in a dream, that means that either you can control the dream and do with it what you want, or you can just merely stop the dream and go deeper into sleep. But generally, what people do is to wake fully up, to wake up out of it. And then we can check our posture. We can take a few deep breaths. We can get ready for and continue to enjoy the moment, and then fall back into a deeper sleep.
Can you hear me?
And so now in the morning when we wake up, one of the things that people are normally doing, they'll do one or two things. They'll either hop right out of bed because they're late for something, or they got late for something because when they first woke up, they kind of went back to sleep. And then they woke up again and maybe went back to sleep. I mentioned to you about the dogs. They come in, they climb in the bed after Tam goes to work. And so that's the first time that I wake up with the dogs coming and getting into bed. So this is the point that I'm talking about now is when we first wake up, the thing to do is to go right back into practicing Anapanasati again, laying there in bed, not getting up, but just saying, oh, what a beautiful morning this is. Oh, I feel so good, taking a really, really deep breath and getting the sleepiness out of the mind even before we wake up. Because the guy who's jumping right out of bed and jumps in the shower, he's doing that just semi-consciously. It takes a little while for us to come up into full awareness. And so coming up into that full awareness as we wake up in the morning, doing it with Anapanasati rather than, oh, I've got to go do this, or I've got students waiting, or what kind of emails are there, or my boss is going to call soon and I've got to get ready. None of that stuff is needed in that morning time. but rather going right into, oh, this is very nice. Whatever it'll be that happens today, I can do it marvelously. I'm not worried about today at all. Right now, we're just being really sabai, really comfortable. Sabai is a Thai word.
Mm-hmm.
Sabai is the Thai word for being very comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
very relaxed and comfortable. So spend a few moments in bed in the mornings doing this also. So we do it in the when we lay down in the bed at night. We put ourselves into the lion's pose or laying on our side, because this is a lot of people. Even the doctors know this, that people do not get good uh, breathing going, because when you're laying on the back, the hospital bed is not a good place for people to breathe, and yet people, when they go to the hospital for breathing problems, they're put into a bed. And when you're in bed, the bottom lower part of the back has lungs that go right close to the back. And if we're laying on the back, we automatically close that part of the lungs down. You cannot take a really full, deep breath when you're sitting or when you're laying on your back. When you're laying on your stomach, you can get a fairly good, deep breath. But that takes a lot of work, because now you got to raise the whole body up and down. So the side is the way to go. Now, there's some advantage on the left and the right side. The Buddha recommends for the right, but whichever is easier and comfortable for you, and you have the ability to move back and forth from sleeping on the left side to sleeping on the right side. So that would be the variety that you would have. But if your legs are sprawled out, that's we want to remember that, so that we can bring the legs together. The knees will be one knee will be close to the other. They will both be slightly bent or even a lot bent. But this is the way that we would sleep on the side, with the knees kind of together and also the feet kind of together. Now you can move the feet back and forth. This is not a rigid posture. It's just a comfortable posture to be in. Dogs do it a lot. Now, dogs also do the Sphinx posture. You know what that is, where you're kind of up on your elbows with your hands like that. This is not the posture that we're talking about. Uh, but dogs will lay in the lion's pose also. But we would rather call it the lion's pose. That means something rather than you sleep like a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Because the dogs are sleeping on their side. So this is the way that we want to practice. Is and the idea is that whenever we are in that posture while we're sleeping, that the body will tend to move out of that posture. Can you wake up enough to put it back into that posture? And how long does it take to wake up to get back into that posture? And so now we're using at night the body's posture as exactly the same way that we began to use the breath while we were setting up. That now the body becomes the anchor. Am I laying on my side, and why am I laying on my side? So I can breathe well. And so we stay away from laying on the back and laying on the stomach. Now we can roll over a bit, but we still want to keep the lung cage open, so that we can continue to breathe and know that we're breathing well. So this is the kind of practice that we would have for bedtime. Do either one of you have any questions about this?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Marcus.
Oh, I'm not sure if you can hear chat.
Your voice is very low right now.
Oh, right. I'm not sure if you could hear chat. Chat's been wanting to ask a question.
I can't hear you hardly. I can hear you, but not well enough to understand what you're saying.
I think chat was wanting to ask a question earlier.
Yep. 1 second.
Okay. Chat. Chatan.
Can you I'm trying to make it more sensitive. Can you hear it now?
I can hear you fine. I can hear you just fine.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. Hi guys. So this so the point is to kind of be mindful throughout the entire sleep, is it?
No. No. But what you just said is a very, very common mistake, and it has to do with the Western mind being time oriented. And so you're talking about all night long or throughout the night. No, because the consciousness is going to be in and out throughout the night. We're talking about particular moments through the night. Maybe as many as 7 moments throughout the night, but not all night long.
Okay.
All right. If you say that you're going to work on doing this all night long, you may spend years in frustration not being able to do it up to some standard that you set for yourself that has the phrase all night long in it. Where the object of this is to get a really good, restful sleep. And that, in fact, that's how and I mentioned this before, that's what the Westerners think. That how can I get a good night's sleep? By sleeping all night long. Okay. And what we're looking at here is no, there's going to be a lot of variety during the night, that nothing is going to happen all night long. A lot of different things are going to come up and change and pass away and that kind of stuff. So don't put the kind of pressure on yourself that has to do with all night or even all the time, because nothing's going to happen all of the time. But the tendency is that the old personality, either in sleep or in awake, is going to take over, because if there's anything that's been happening all the time, is the old personality was just running by habit. And that our job is to occasionally keep interrupting that and bringing ourselves up to a higher level. But if we say, oh, I've got to come up and stay at a higher level, that's merely an expectation out of the personality. And so this is a major frame of reference for every student to go through. I'm glad that you actually mentioned that. Okay, to come out of our time orientation about past and future and only consider it in the sense of the now.
Just the now.
Just the now. So if you slightly wake up and recognize that you're not in the posture, you can just get back into the posture and say this is nice. But if in your style, if the guy wakes up and he recognizes he's not in the posture, he'll say, damn it, I failed again. Look at how much, I don't even know. I got to check my clock to see how long I was out of it. You see what I'm coming to? So don't have that kind of mentality, because you will never be able to match your own goals. The whole idea here is that we have already met our goals. That there is no reason for dreaming, because dreaming is just a kind of wanting. And if we're already in a state of deep satisfaction and we don't want anything, then there's no need for the dreams.
So you don't actually need to dream?
Pardon?
You don't actually need to dream?
No, you don't need to dream.
Huh.
They say that you need to dream to finish up, or that people do dream to finish up on unfinished business throughout the day, or to take care of business for tomorrow. But if you've already taken care of all your business today, ending the day happily, and you've got nothing planned for tomorrow, then there's no reason to dream. But that's also the same thing about, in fact, I want to make sure that you understand that we're not making much distinction between night dreaming and daydreaming. There's not much distinction between them, which also means that in the daytime, when you're fully alert and you're in a state of not wanting anything, then more than likely you're not going to have thoughts of wanting something. You're not going to have those daydreams going. And so this is the way that we would look at it, is that whenever you can catch the body coming out of its pose, never mind that it's been out of that pose for 15 or 20 minutes, that's not the issue. The issue is waking up just long enough to get back into pose, clean the mind out, finish out the hindrances, come to a state of joy for the moment, and allowing the body to go back to sleep. Does that make sense for you?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay, Marcus, how about you?
I think so.
I can't hear you. Your mic was very low volume.
Right. I think so.
Now, okay, all right. Well, let us say it this way. In the spirit of keeping the talks short, so as to not bore the reader or the video followers, we can go ahead and end now, unless you've got any other questions or any other things that you want to discuss.
I do have one question.
Okay.
I often find that even though I'm with the breath during the day, there are still also a lot of thoughts and feelings and emotions going on. Sort of, maybe not really at the same time. It feels like the breath is in the background and the thoughts and stuff are in the foreground, but I think it's more like there's just slight gaps in between the breath when the thoughts come in or something.
This idea of background and foreground and the idea of simultaneous is a little bit misleading. That things don't happen simultaneously, but we can move back and forth very quickly. The mind is, in fact, vast. The Buddha says that the mind is so fast that we cannot even have an analogy for how fast the mind is. So that means now that the mind is moving back and forth between the thoughts, or that the thoughts are coming in when you have the breath. I fully expect that to happen. And I fully expect then also that you're going to start watching for these thoughts, so that, let's put it this way, during each in-breath and each out-breath, there's only one point that we really have to have the sati. And that sati is to know that we're having a deep, long in-breath, and then later on the out-breath to know that we're having a deep, long out-breath. Those are only 2 points during that breath. Now, these breaths that we're talking about may last 10 seconds to 20 seconds, which means that we're going now down to the range of 6 breaths a minute, down to even 3 breaths a minute. So there's a whole lot of time going on, and the mind is now going to be active while you're still at least seeing the breath on the in-breath and then seeing it later on the out-breath. So now the job is twofold. One is to get the thoughts going, in the sense of talking to yourself about how good this is, how nice it feels, and experiencing the moment. And go ahead and let those thoughts be there right up front. You don't have to push them to the background. It's just that there's going to be some time sharing. You're going to be a little while on the breath and a little time on these thoughts and whatnot. The next point is that you're going to begin to guard these thoughts so that you're only going to allow wholesome thoughts come in. What are wholesome thoughts? The kind of thoughts that are going to help you maintain this watching of the breath and maintaining this state of sukha and satisfaction. And mindful of the kinds of thoughts that will pull us out of that. Thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, thoughts of wanting something we don't have, thoughts of doubt, thoughts that have to do with boredom and restlessness and those kinds of things. So we need to be on guard. Basically, we were on guard to get the mind out of the hindrances so that we could watch the breath. Now we want to start guarding the mind and what it's doing so that we can maintain that breath. So that's how we deal with those background thoughts, is you begin to manage them and recognize they're not really in the background, they're just there. And that we can pay attention to them, and then we pay attention to the breath, and then we're paying attention to the thoughts, and then we're paying attention to the breath. And eventually in that back and forth will come another one, and that is actual real feelings will start to arise. And so that now we're beginning to have to deal with three things: how I feel, the breath itself, and what the mind is doing. And hopefully how I feel is the kind of feeling that we're actually generating, which is I feel good. That's how I feel. I feel joyful. I feel successful, which is a whole lot better feel. The feeling of being safe is much better feeling than feeling afraid or feeling unhappy or dissatisfied with our practice. So we have to guard then the mind to keep those kind of feelings out also, because they will take you away from the breath. They will also take you out of your state of success and satisfaction. They will rob you of your fearlessness or your feeling of safety and put you back into a state of fear. Oh, am I doing it right? Kind of doubt that can arise from there. So does that answer that question for you?
Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Wholesome thoughts. Make sure that your thoughts remain wholesome. Well, Marcus, do you have anything you want to cover today?
No, I'm good.
Pardon?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see if we can get that microphone working for next time. It all of a sudden went south.
Okay.
Now I can hear you good. That was a good one. All right. So we'll see you guys later.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.